Welcome to the Krueger and Krueger podcast, where we talk about baseball and softball, life, and everything in between. My name is Tony Krueger, and I'm with my dad, Corey Krueger. This podcast is sponsored by Network Health. Network Health Medicare Advantage plans offer great benefits and an expansive coverage network that keeps you secure at home, free to venture. So today's topic is strength and conditioning. This is something that's becoming more prevalent in training and youth sports in general. But we're going to be talking about strength and conditioning in all topics kind of surrounding that and how it relates to travel baseball and travel softball in particular today. So, Dad, the first question I want to ask you is, why is it important to train speed, strength, and athleticism for youth athletes?
Well, I think there's many reasons, but I think for especially for younger players, number one, it's a discipline thing. It's like kind of getting yourself established into a work and grind environment where over time, as you get older, you get yourself into a regimen. I think that's a big thing. Because when you get older, it's, if you really want to make it to the next level, you've got to put the time in. The second thing I think is it's really good just for like developing all over athleticism, just trying to be faster a little bit. If you can hit the ball a little bit harder, you can run a little bit faster. Maybe the difference in a game is you getting to second base on a close play, stealing a base, etc. Who knows? But those two things are super important. And I think it's just good, holistically for like you as a person and the way you feel about yourself too. The harder you work, you feel, a little more gratitude for your success.
And as a college coach of 10 plus years, how would you say that affects how you recruit? How do you look at players in relation to their athleticism, and how important do you think it is for players maybe in high school trying to get recruited? How important is it that they speed train and strength train and stuff like that?
Well, I think for a lot of coaches, they're looking for players, when they're looking at video or they're looking at workouts that, come out over field level or NSR and NCSA and stuff like that. They're looking for athletes who are already putting that time in, who are going to come join their culture and add to it. They're looking for that type of player. However, but you want to if you want to get yourself looked at, you want to be seen. If you can do something eye-popping, I think that's really, important. If you can throw it to second base a little bit quicker as a catcher, you can hit the ball a little bit harder, a little bit further, a little bit farther. I think that's a big deal. So I think all coaches are looking for players who are already putting that time in and going to add to their culture that way.
And would you say that speed in softball is maybe a little bit more important than baseball? Like as a softball coach recruiting, do you look for, a certain time, like a 20-yard dash time, or do you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the home to first, the 3.0 and less is kind of like the golden area. But if someone's like around a 3.24, but they're good base runners and they're athletic, we're okay with that. But we're constantly trying to work that number down on the team that exists. But we're also looking for players who already can break that barrier and add speed to the team.
And you've seen your players at the college level, but also some of our players at the high school and youth level all increase or decrease, let's say, their speed or their 20-yard dash. What do you think goes into that? Because just having seen that firsthand over the last few years, how do you think we and you at the college level have had so many players, and how does it work where they get all those reductions in their times?
I mean, things haven't changed since I was a player. To run, to be fast, you've got to run fast. You've got to practice running fast. And that means working on the efficiency of your motion. It means working on your first step. It means working on your explosiveness and your ability to jet forward. So, we see that explosion training, running sprints, lifting weights, all of those things combined have made kids faster. So for me, I think it's important to learn that from an early age that you want to get quicker, and in baseball, it's a little different, because, you're talking about testing a 60-yard dash versus a 20-yard dash. Softball is a 20-yard dash. Typically, that's kind of like the most important sprint. 60 yards is a lot further. It's tougher, harder to do. To be quick for 20 yards, that's something we can really, really work on. And that's a lot of first step movement. for 60 yards, it's really the same thing, but it's going to have to happen for a longer period of time, So I think that's something to think about too.
Yeah. And what is explosion training, just for everyone who's watching? Like, how would you describe explosion training? Because we don't just call it strength and conditioning. Like,
Right.
we call it explosion training. So what would you say separates explosion training from just like a regular strength and conditioning thing?
Things that are specific to softball and baseball. That's really what is the difference, is that we're working on things that, like if I'm going to be fielding a ground ball and I've got to make 5 really explosive fast steps to get to it, I'm working on those 5 steps. We really don't have to travel that far in softball and baseball a lot of the time on a play, whether you're playing defensively or doing, you're on the bases, so you hit a triple, obviously that's a lot more running, but it's the first quick steps, getting your running down efficiently, making sure that we stay in a straight line to make ourselves faster from point A to point B, first base to second base, etc. But then the other thing is the explosiveness is, hey, I want to be able to drive a ball into the gap. I want to hit a double, right? I want to throw the ball 65 miles an hour. Well, that just doesn't happen from, lifting. It's got to happen from a combination of things like we discussed.
Yeah.
So that's what explosion training is that without getting into specifics on certain things that would make you get really good at this or really good at that, lunges, reverse lunges, control of our body, the ability to handle weight in our hands or resistance cords or bounce back or anything like that can help you develop the power and speed.
Well, I really like what you just said there, because you said just lifting alone isn't going to do the job, right? Because I think that's a big reason why we call it explosion training, is because the implication there is that it happens quickly, in baseball and softball, every movement you make is like very quick. It takes a very short amount of time. You have to move fast. So think about, if you load your max squat onto the bar, let's say, you're going to be going up pretty slow, right? And so that's kind of, that's good. It's creating that force potential that you can create, like, through the ground, but you're not necessarily training your muscles and your nervous system to move quickly, right, in that point. So it has the potential, but it's not there yet. So we have to work on jumps and sprints and med balls and all the stuff you just talked about. So I thought that was a really, really good thing to say. In your opinion, though, what would you say is the most common physical attribute that holds kids back from achieving their goals? In other words, like, what attribute do youth athletes often lack that stops them from achieving, getting recruited or getting a scholarship?
Right. So one thing that, and this is just unfortunate, but I think, the first thing is like size.
That's what I was going to say.
And it's like, so a lot of coaches will say, okay, this person is not very tall, I'm not going to, recruit them. But I think that's really unfair. There's so many great players out there who, regardless of their size, can really do a lot of good things, whether it's drive the ball or run quickly and stuff like that. So the one thing I would say too is that, like if you're not the tallest person, if you're not the most physical person, you can overcome a lot of what might look bad on paper by developing some of the 5 skills. Like 1, can you run well? 2, can you catch well? Can you throw well? Can you hit well? And then the intangibles: do I know softball? Do I know baseball? Size doesn't necessarily matter. There's a couple guys I went to high school with that weren't big people, did not weigh very much, but went on to play, high level ball. And how did that happen? Well, over time they developed something in those 5 attributes, from run, catch, hit, and throw, and the intangibles. They did something so well that they were accepted to the teams they were looking at. So.
Right. And obviously, like you said, size from like a height perspective is not something that we can control, or your frame, like your bone structure, but we also can control, how we approach the weight room, how we approach, sleep and nutrition too. So size is, let's say, 50% in your control too. I mean, you can work on that to an extent. I mean, I would say the kids that I do lessons with, the most common thing that they're lacking in is size. A lot of kids come in, they're like, I want to learn how to hit for power. I want to hit home runs or whatever. We can teach them bat path and extension, and we can teach them how to load and create power with their hips and all that kind of stuff. But the bottom line is, I mean, if you're a high school dude and you weigh 150 pounds, it's going to be really difficult to hit a home run. That's just the bottom line of it, right? So, just eating more food in general, getting better sleep, lifting, 2 to 4 times a week, and making sure you're increasing your weights, and you're also doing lifts that are going to translate to the field, like you said. That stuff is under control. So those are some things that we can do to actually gain a lot of power in our throws and our swing, and also, increase speed too. I think, getting in the weight room can increase your speed as long as we do it right, as long as it's in conjunction with the fast twitch stuff too, like explosion training. So on that kind of same vein though, what are some less obvious ways that athletes can improve their athleticism? Like sleep and nutrition is one example, but what are some less obvious ways that an athlete can get faster, get stronger, stuff like that?
Here's the two things I would say. They're really weird. You'll laugh at this, but but you kind of know this from growing up with me as a dad. One, vision. Vision.
That's a good one.
You've got to have great vision. So you can work on your vision. You can work on seeing the ball longer. There's tons of drills that you can do where you see the ball longer to hit, see the ball longer to field. Work on seeing the field or react to like colors and things of that nature. I mean, I had a player that played for me in college ball, baseball, many, many years back that was very, very into that, and we'd test him on all these things, but he really got into it, you know what I mean? And so vision is number one. The second thing is weird stuff, like people think, oh, if I'm going to be a softball, baseball player, I got to practice softball and baseball. Well, I really feel like if you're playing volleyball, you're playing basketball, you're doing other things, racquetball, pickleball, doesn't matter, tennis, you got to do that as well. That makes for great athletes. All the guys that I hung out with that were young, that all played Division I, they were all great athletes. So I think of, like players like Matt Erickson. There's a guy who like literally started as the quarterback, the point guard, and the shortstop. How did that happen? I mean, he's a great athlete. He did lots of things. But if you played him in tennis, he's going to probably beat you. You know what I mean? So so I think of that all the time too. And when I was a kid, we just spent a ton of time playing sports. I mean, just kickball, anything we could, and when I played college ball, we were playing all the time, just racquetball, anything we could do to be more athletic and be quicker. So training, lifting, explosion training. I think there's also weird stuff, chasing down a Frisbee, chasing down a tennis ball off a wall in a gym. Anything you can do to improve your vision and improve your athleticism, stop and start and be quicker. That's it. That's the key.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, in my career, when stuff started to really click for me athletically, when I really started to see crazy jumps and exit velocity and 60-yard dash, coming down, I looked back, and that's when I really started to try different things like play football, basketball, or even do like you said, weird stuff. Like I would try to work on juggling or like breakdancing or like, or like fighting, like mixed martial arts, all sorts of stuff that is going to like train your body awareness and coordination. I totally agree with that. And I think that was actually the next thing that I had up here. So you already covered it, but that's a really good point. Just branching out and doing different things is definitely going to make you a better athlete.
I've never met a breakdancer who wasn't athletic.
Exactly.
I've never met, someone who was great at racquetball that couldn't handle playing softball or baseball. You know what I mean? Like, because those sports are so synergistic. If you think about the serve in a tennis match, it's the same as throwing a pitch.
Throwing, yeah.
And if you think about hitting a backhand, it's like hitting left-handed, or hitting a forehand. If you're right-handed, it's like hitting as you normally would. And there's changeups and there's fastballs and there's different stuff that comes at you. So sports like tennis, sports like racquetball, kickball, pickleball, even football though too. It's all reading, seeing, adapting. That's what has to happen when you're playing center field. So why wouldn't that work for cross training too?
I always felt like playing defensive back in football was the same as playing outfield, and like the footwork and the the angles and all that
shoulder turn, hip turn, everything.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons that you get someone like Deion Sanders, who can literally like do both. And the fact that he was left-handed was just kind of amazing too. Like, and they said that, probably, even at the collegiate level that he would have been a great switch hitter. So it's like, watching him and then watching him play defensive back too, or return punts or return kicks. I mean, clearly he's one of the greatest athletes in the 21st century, 20th century,
Yeah, and speaking of Dion and like multi-sport athletes and stuff, so in your college career playing football and baseball, would you say that taking time off for the football season, like taking time off from baseball, do you think that made you a better baseball player in the long run?
Yes and no. I made a deal with myself that I would hit at least once a week. And I would throw once a week, so I took time off. But the thing that I regret the most, and you'll think this is ridiculous, but when I was in college, back then, Division III, there were people that played 2 and sometimes even 3 sports. And I was going to try to play basketball. I wouldn't have been a starter. That team was pretty good, but I would have made it, I think. And the reason I didn't is I was so afraid of my academics. I was afraid that I wouldn't, hack it. But what I found is when I played football and I played baseball, my grades were always better because I literally was like, I had a regimen, I had a time,
A routine.
and everyone's different. But for me, that's my biggest regret is not playing college basketball. I think I could have done it, and I really wish I would have. It's one of my favorite sports, and I think that anybody that like tries to do 2 things, whether you're a volleyball player who plays softball or you're a football player who runs track, you're a sprinter, and stuff like that. I think that kind of like synergy does make you a better athlete on both sides. But like, once again, it's time and it's commitment. I mean, are you going to get your lifting in? Most likely with football, yes. Are you going to get your explosion training in? Well, yeah, you're going to condition during your season. But that's the tricky part, is that, does being an explosion training junkie in the winter, separate from football and baseball, make you a little bit better in both of those? Probably,
Yeah.
So
Well, that kind of brings up a whole new can of worms, though, I feel like, because then if my goal is to play high level baseball or softball, but I'm a youth athlete, so I could be anywhere from like 12 to 18 years old, but I play, let's say, 2 other sports. Say I play basketball and volleyball. What is the line where I'm playing too much volleyball and too much basketball that's going to start to hurt my goal of trying to play softball or baseball?
Listen, I've been doing this for over 30 years, and I cannot say that I am a subject matter expert on that, because I think it's an individual approach. For me, I guess I was just going to make sure that I was always going to be good enough to do what I needed to do to help my team when I needed to.
Right.
I do see a lot of young players out there who, what I like to call crash, or cram for the test. And I think that's a problem. Like, you can't, softball and baseball, those are sports where you need to work on the skills of hitting, especially, a lot. So you can't show up on March, 14th, 15th, 16th and say, oh, here I am, and you've been playing basketball and volleyball the whole time. Yeah, you'll be a good enough athlete and you'll be in good enough shape, but the skill that you really required, can you do it as well as you should?
Yeah.
That's the biggest question. So I'm not down on anybody who does it. There's many people that do, and they're successful, but I think you're right. Like, there's a balance, like for you wanted to make it to the highest level. How did you do it? Well, you really spent a lot of time specifically getting faster, getting stronger, right? Getting more explosive. You also did some of the weird stuff, so you were playing basketball, you were playing, flag football or touch football and martial arts or stuff out at Plowman Park where like a capture the flag type of stuff. You think about that. Well, that did also, it added to your success. So, right. So like, I mean, should somebody just do one thing and a bunch of other stuff, or should they, be totally into 3 different sports and really, segregate everything? I don't know. I don't have the answer. And I don't think it's fair for me as a coach to tell people what they should do. But I can tell you this, when I see a really good player, or when I promote one of my players and I say, oh, 2-sport athlete, this kid plays linebacker for his high school team, and he also plays center field for us. I feel like that is something a college coach is looking at and saying, man, this kid's an athlete.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's my take on it. So,
well, you mentioned capture the flag at Pollen Park. You know, if anyone listening was a part of Survival of the Fitness, or if you know anything about that, make sure you comment on this video, because that's an insane pull. That was a long time ago. Mm-hmm. But all right, so kind of switching topics here. I think you'll like this one. What are some old school workout techniques that you think should be brought back that have kind of gotten lost in time, that really were helpful and made better athletes that just aren't done anymore?
Two of them that really stand out to me. One is soft toss. I just feel like so many coaches have gotten away from doing soft toss. And I think that's one of the reasons that our hitters are better. It's a vision thing for me. It's a timing thing for me. It's a explosiveness thing for me. In order to hit a ball hard from soft toss, from the side, just to, flip or whatever you want to call it, you have got to really do a lot of things athletically. There's a lot of kids that come in by us that are older and cannot do that.
Do it, yeah.
And the reason being is they're not athletic enough. They're too used to a machine. They're too used to short toss. You know what I mean? I think, and they're too used to a tee. So I think personally that drill everyone needs to do that. And there needs to be more players that can actually serve and do it and pitch it. There's literally like kids that'll come and they'll like throw like a gas ball on the ground or a ball that floats too high.
Or they'll hit the kid.
Yeah, you have to learn how to do it. You have to find a good partner. Yeah. That's number one. Number two, I would say paddles. You want soft hands, for fielding. Yeah, I remember, these days we really, and I'm guilty of this too. I spent a lot of time coming through balls and picking on balls and picking up balls because, we want soft hands, right? But I remember, you try catching a ground ball off the old Emmanuel gym floor at Appleton West. That thing is wood, and it's like it was so fast and so slick. The reason that your dad never played infield, can I tell you? I couldn't do that drill very well. Yeah. And so coach was like, hey, Coach Erickson's like, this kid sucks. He knew it. I got put in the outfield. And I wasn't good at it, but I believe in the drill. You say, well, geez, if it stopped you from playing the infield, why do you like it? Well, because the kids that could do it, they were great infielders and they had soft hands and they came through the ball and all of those things. So I think I know it's old school, and I know that people think, oh, geez, why would you do that? But if you put a paddle on someone's hand with a rubber band and they're fielding, they're going to have to use two hands. That's number one, and they have to be quick on exchange, right? But then all the thing is their hands get softer. You put a glove on, it's a piece of cake compared to that.
Oh yeah.
I know we over at the school we have like 5 different paddle gloves and stuff. And I know that Kyle and you use that sometimes because it's a good way of doing things. It's actually a good way to practice catcher exchange too, like faster and stuff too.
It's true.
But, for me, I think if you're two drills, those two right there. But the last thing I would say is I wasn't going to bring this up before, but getting back to your explosion training stuff and all that kind of stuff, I really, really believe that, a lot of people get away from because there's so many bad names given to if you did a down and back type of thing, they call them really bad names. And so a lot of coaches can't get, because liability, you want to call something the death march or something like that, so they get away from doing those drills. But
it's like a gasser.
Gas. Right? Yeah, exactly. Or but those drills, I don't know any way how else could you get faster, especially if you're competing against the rest of the team.
Right.
To me, that should be brought back. Because I don't know, you want speed, you want quickness, competition.
Yeah.
Those 3 things. I would say definitely on the soft toss. I really believe that's gone from this world almost in softball and baseball, and we do it almost every day. And I think it makes our hitters a little bit better.
It happens in every lesson we do.
Yep.
But we always talk about keeping good posture, like making sure that your hips are back and your head's over the plate so that you can stay on the ball.
Yep.
To do soft toss properly, you have to do that. If you're if your head starts coming up and your barrel starts pulling away from the ball, you're just going to miss it every single time.
Yeah, and typically that's what older kids will do. They'll try to do everything faster, and they think by doing it faster, if they're going to go around it, right? So they're going to pull away, pull off, lose their eyes, lose their hips, lose their balance, lose their control, miss the ball. Well, by the time you see somebody who's got that dialed in and can actually directionally like hit it exactly where they want to, they are a great hitter. They're ready to go. It doesn't matter if they're facing 65 as a softball player or a 49-mile-an-hour changeup. And as a baseball player, it doesn't matter if they're facing 90 or if they're facing a 78-mile-an-hour changeup. They're ready to hit.
Yeah, totally. A couple of things I had on here that I really wanted to bring up, and we don't have to talk about it, but hill sprints. So sprinting on hills, I feel like that's something that's been kind of lost. There's a lot of like treadmill stuff that kind of mimics that. And I trained at Accelerate when I was a kid. So shout out to Mike. Like, I think sprinting on an incline is really, really helpful. It reinforces like really good like foot position and like core position when you're sprinting. And it's just a really low impact thing to do too if you're just like running on like a hill, just like on the grass. And then tire flips too. So like we have a bunch of big tires at the school that we use for explosion training, but flipping a tire, super explosive, works the whole body. And using like a sledgehammer to like hit the tire. So
power,
that's something that
strong hands too, right?
Oh yeah. And core too.
So when you were talking about that with the hill thing, so I guess I should bring that up too, like if you don't mind. So we're literally in a room that's surrounded by pictures of hundreds of people. There's sports people, there's movie people, there's music people. Jesse Owens right there, Tony, that picture of him right there, that picture has been in my mind since I was a kid. So that actually came out of a sports book that we had in our bathroom. It said the top 150 athletes of the 20th century. And so I looked at that picture and I thought to myself, wow, that's really good running form. He's really explosive out of that position. It looks like he's out of the box, that blocks there, excuse me. But is that any different than what you see when you see Ricky Henderson stealing a base?
He's like super angled down.
He's taking off and slowly, like gradually rising up out of his position. Well, the reason I think about that is that's kind of what happens when you run on a hill.
You have to, yeah.
And so since we're giving all these shots out, so I appreciate Mike, everything he did for you and what Accelerate did for you and everybody out there who's training, because listen, it takes a village. It's not just us doing it; it's everybody who helps out. But the thing is, my brother Craig and Scott Ruppert. That's a great example. Scott Ruppert was a All-American and was, I think, for a while held the national record for most collegiate yards as a running back, right? But when he was at Lawrence, they had 3 or 4 years there where they were in contention for national playoffs, right? They're winning the conference, all that kind of stuff. But when I was a kid, I would literally watch those two guys run hills all the time, and it was like their workout,
Yeah.
And so when Herb Park no longer has this, but it used to have 4 hills with a pool. And so I remember my brothers just going over there and they would run the one side of the hill and then run down. And the run down actually seemed like kind of, it doesn't seem like it's as effective, but actually it's a balance thing. It's a nose over your toes thing. So we sprint up and then go down under control and sprint up and go in and just do a lap. There's 4 sprints and you try to do as many as you could till fatigue took over, right? So but I remember Scott Ruppert doing that on the hill, and we used to talk about Walter Payton when he made the Bears for like the first couple of weeks of tryout camp, and he said that Walter Payton didn't like the fact that Scott could run the hill with him that he would work out at, and so that tells you something, right? Like Walter Payton, potentially the greatest player to ever hold a football, right?
Right.
And Scott Ruppert was doing that with him and brought it here to Appleton, and it was a big deal.
So it must be working in some way.
I mean, I got to think Scott Ruppert had one of the best careers ever. If you were here, he'd probably talk about that. And if, Walter Payton were still alive, you'd probably hear him talking about like his preparation, I mean, Walter Payton was impossible to tackle.
Yeah.
And not the biggest guy, right? So how did he do that? How did Barry Sanders do that? I bet any money there's probably some incline work going on there.
Yeah, and that's what I really like about the school is that we kind of combine the new and the old stuff. Like, I think there's a lot of stuff that gets lost in today's training, but we're just so focused on the end result. So, like, how do I get this exit velocity? How do I get this scholarship or whatever? But the training is what we really like to focus on. And there's a lot of stuff that, like we just brought up, has been sort of lost to time that isn't really used anymore in training, but it's super, super valuable. And so, but we also use the newer stuff too. I mean, we have like technology and all that, but, that's what I really enjoy about what we do at the school and our camps and lessons and stuff. So we're going to end it with a kind of a fun question now. So this is going to be right up your alley. So the question is, are movies a good source of motivation for young athletes? And if so, how important is it for kids to have a role model to look up to on the screen?
I think that anything, I don't care if it's music, movies, a book, any of that can be motivational. Anything can be, right? And all of us can pick 1, 2, 3, 4 things that have made us who we are or why we do something, right? Something that changed us maybe at a moment, right? And so I think, yes, that answer is definitely yes, no doubt.
Yeah.
Right. I also think though, like just remembering that, like the emotion of that movie, the emotion of a song, my walk-up song, whatever it is,
Right.
I mean, it's just like overwhelming, I mean, I think, you had a fun time picking your walk-up songs for college. And I think you actually had some that were like, sometimes you had one song, sometimes you had a different song in the same season because your mindset switched. You know what I mean? And I think that's a great example. But, if you have a movie that when you were 12 years old inspired you, and today you have a movie, that same movie is inspiring you, it made you who you are. The Natural did that to me.
Yeah.
Robert Redford, God bless him. He's gone from this earth now, but I really, honestly, that movie, because it told a story of someone who failed but was able to come back, right? And I think that is the most important story of it all. I mean, the book itself by, I don't know if you know this or not, but Bernard Malmu's The Natural is a little different. It's a little darker. When you have a movie, it's a little schmaltzy. So it like, there's more of a positive. Hey, he hits the home run. He plays catch with his true son at the end, whatever.
Right.
But when you see that though, it's just like that feeling of, anybody can like be redeemed and anybody can like, make it up. You know what I mean? But it also is a cautionary tale. Don't go down that route. Don't be like him.
Right.
So I think, I don't know, for all of us, I think movies, music, books, anything, people, it's good to have a role model on the screen. It's good to have a role model or have an idea of what you want to do. Because I'll also tell you this. So in the 90s, everything was Nike. Everything. Michael Jordan was that to so many people. And I think that you had like this whole generation that thinks of him as that's the person they look up to. I was at the, kind of the middle and end of that time frame. And Dion like really stood out to me as that guy. I was never that flamboyant or like, I never like when I intercepted a ball, I never like could return a ball like him. I mean, he's amazing, right? But, I think of him, I think of Michael Jordan, I think of Larry Bird and all those guys, like, and I'm talking a lot about that Nolan Ryan, all these people that like you could look up to and kind of see that they're still here. They're still here. But think of the people like Otani and guys like that are here today. The fact that he can pitch, he can hit, he can do all that stuff, Tony, like those are the people that, I think our young people are looking up to, and they're saying, hey, how did they do it? And it goes back to your explosion training and your diversity and your, all that different stuff that we talked about. It's got to come from that. And that's who they're looking up to right now. Nolan Ryan started the workout phase in baseball.
Yeah, in baseball.
Nobody else did it before him, really.
Right. I think that's a big reason why he was so dominant too. Though is no one else believed that lifting or sprinting or that like was even helpful.
Right.
And he started doing it and he just absolutely dominated. I mean,
Yeah.
the best pitcher of all time. So that's really interesting. Are there any other movies that stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, like, and you'll laugh at this, but like, It's a Wonderful Life,
Yeah.
is definitely like stands out to me because it's like, I just really believe in like, hey, it's you're going to fail sometimes. You're going to fail, and I think that's something that's like one thing we haven't talked about. We talked a lot about athletics, and we talked about like getting faster, getting stronger. We haven't talked a lot about the mental side, right?
Right.
And that's okay. I know that's a different podcast, but think about this: It's a Wonderful Life. He was ready to end his life because of his situation. He was so desperate. It was to the point where he was ready to go, and a little bit of help, a little bit of encouragement. The next thing you know, everything's good again, right? Well, who is that encourager? Who is that energy bank? We all need it. We need someone to support us. We need, that's mom and dad, that's teammates, that's coaches. So I always think like, hey, that's something we can practice too, whether we're a coach or a parent or a teammate. We can always practice helping somebody on the team and being a better teammate too, because you never know what someone's going through. That's your It's a Wonderful Life,
So you like the redemption story?
Big time.
Yeah.
When I write as an author, I always do that. I always I want to see people change. I want to see them transform.
Yeah.
We all go through a lot, but if you can go through a lot and keep your head, stay on your feet, that's usually a good sign. And I think we all need a little bit of that, especially in today's world.
Well, it's really relevant too, just in the sports like world too, though, because there's injuries and there's a lot of things that can happen. Like we both have had season-ending injuries where that's kind of a redemption arc in itself, right? Like trying to come back after not training for a long time. So I think those kinds of movies, like you just brought up, it literally gives kids a blueprint on how to deal with and navigate those kind of situations where, let's say you tear your ACL or you have to get Tommy John or whatever it is, teaches them how to deal with that. Because that can be like shattering to an athlete, I think. Because especially when you've played a sport your entire life and all of a sudden that sport's taken away from you, it can kind of cause an identity crisis for a lot of people too. So that's another thing as well, is I think a lot of the best athletes in general, just getting into the mental side a little bit, a lot of the best athletes don't have their identity fully rooted in their sport. Like they don't believe that they're just a baseball player or a football player. Like they know that even if that was taken away from them, they still know who they are and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's also really, really difficult to, teach a young kid. It's one of those things where they kind of have to go through it. You have to have a season-ending injury, or you have to, maybe your career just ends. Maybe you don't make it or whatever, but, everyone has to kind of come to terms with that at some point. But seeing it on the screen, on the big screen, makes it easier because it gives you something to relate to and something to kind of, understand.
Well, so I really think that one of my favorite movies is Cinderella Man with Russell Crowe. And I just, because like literally he's like told he can't box anymore. He's been kicked out, not just because he's physically unable to do it, but because he broke his hand. He had some bad fights. They didn't like how he's fighting. He literally was banned. Like he had no license to box. And this man came back and ended up being the world champion. First of all, he had to get past the people who kicked him out of boxing, right? Second of all, he had to get past the depression, because there was no money and his whole family was starving, and there was, what I mean? And so you think of a movie that's like a redemption story, you think of a movie that like would really inspire you, that's a great song. And then the follow-up that had nothing to do with it, but the Cinderella Man song by Eminem is like so big because that's what he's talking about, is like coming back, but I think what you were saying there, you might want to like mention to your viewers. I know you say this all the time. Like, there's going to be a time when you're no longer going to be able to play your sport. You know what I mean? I've heard you say that to other players.
Right.
I've heard you say that to young kids. So when you're doing it now, do it 100% and whatever. It's inspiring, right?